Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and today we're going to begin the cuttings off of the fig trees, not just this 5-in-1. We've received requests, I'd say, from close to almost 100 emails. They're sometimes coming in at a rate of 3 to 5 per minute on the initial day of the giveaway. So I'm going to try to get through as many of those as I can. I got through the first 20, 30 applicants, letting them know that I'll do my best to accommodate them. But they just keep on coming in. Even several days later, people are still requesting, please include me. So what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to basically go through all of the figs that I have on my property. I'm going to try to divide them and stretch cuttings to as many people as I possibly can. And I've even reached out to a few of my friends, and hopefully we're going to get to meet some of them later on today as I gather these cuttings to get them out to you today. The first thing I want to share with you is in regards to the importance is some of you guys were writing me in regards to, receiving figs from other friends, or, a random fig sprouted in your property. And let me share with you an example of just that. Right behind me over here is a couple of examples. This here is a little seedling fig that basically germinated from one of the seeds from, a fig that basically got away or a bird ate, and basically it passed through its body, leaving these seeds that then ultimately germinated. Most fig varieties are, I don't want to say seedless, you might see the seeds, but that they're basically infertile seeds and that they will not germinate. But here's an example of a seedling that did germinate off of the original fig. Over here to my left is another seedling that also germinated last year. I'm only leaving these for demonstration purposes. I could use them as rootstock, but I would never allow it to grow to a mature tree and basically provide you and your family with those quality figs that you'd be expecting. There's a chance it might happen, but I wouldn't invest the years and the time it's going to take for this little seedling to mature into a fruit-giving fruit tree, which could take sometimes as little as 2 to 3 years, but it could take upwards of 5 to 8 years. That's a huge investment of water, fertilizer, time, energy, and pruning year after year to see what random results will happen. However, all the varieties that are here behind me all started somewhere. They all started from a seed. People loved it, shared it with their neighbors, and the popularity of that grew. So there is value in growing seeds, but the likelihood that it's going to turn into something that's going to be, of value to you and your family and friends is slim compared to going with a known proven variety, which is the importance of now making cuttings and taking those cuttings and propagating more genetically identical trees to that original parent tree that provided you and your friends and family with that flavor and that distinctness and that color that you guys were seeking. So that's the importance of cuttings. You can also accomplish genetically identical trees by way of air layering. So again, we talked about cuttings. Second is air layering, and thirdly is grafting. And we've talked about all of those in past videos, and I'll be refreshing upon all of those in the upcoming days and weeks. So to begin now, I just want to share with you the varieties of figs that I'm going to share with you that I've got here on my property, and then hopefully we'll be visiting some other properties later on today. The first one, again, just to reiterate, I'm going to be cutting here is the Kadota fig, which is a green variety of fig. This one over here to my left is a Tiger, also known as the Panache fig, which is a green fig with white stripes. The one in the center over here is a brown turkey fig, so it's a brown fig. We come around this way, and then I've got a little bit to spare off of this Chicago hardy variety. So for those of you growing in a more colder zone outside of like Southern California, this may be a great variety for you. And then my smallest and most recent graft that I've accomplished here on the fig is the Celestial fig. It was originally a Black Mission, which somehow broke apart. The graft just wasn't strong enough, and maybe a bird landed on it, causing the graft to tear. So then we re-grafted it with the next variety I was able to get my hand on is the Celestial, which is a purple fig, which I thought would be unique as well for the garden. But I have maybe one cutting I can spare off of this teeny tiny amount, but we'll find out shortly. Let's take a look at the other figs I'm going to share with you. Follow me. So this variety over here I obtained from one of my friend's homes. She's also a public figure known as Sheila, and she said that this was a family Kadota tree. Just to eliminate the risk that it could be something else, I'm going to call this, if this ends up on your doorstep, as the Sheila Kadota, as this is the Kadota tree that came out of Sheila's property. Again, if I didn't buy it myself and I don't know where it came from, I'm going to identify the person whose property it came from. Again, just in case it doesn't prove to be a Kadota and instead proves to be some other green variety of fig. But this here is a green variety of fig, and we've done a few videos on this as well. One being, I remember from the title being something called like the Eye of the Tiger, or where we basically used oil to help with the ripening process of figs later in the season. And I know that's worked for a lot of customers as well. But I'll put a link to that video so you can see what this fig looked like when it was more upright and supporting some green figs. So this again we're going to call the Sheila Kadota. And let me show you a couple more. So this fig to my right is one of our family favorites. I always talk about my grandfather's fig that is basically the rootstock for that 5-in-1 fig. This one here is the fig tree that I grew up with on my property. In addition to grandpa's fig, my mom also introduced a fig tree, again, as far back as I can remember. I'd say somewhere between, as far back as I can remember, playing in the garden, which I'd say was somewhere between 5 and 8 years of age. And this was another green variety of fig, but the flesh on this one was a lot lighter, and a pretty easy to peel fig, which my family likes, enjoys peeling the figs. So this here's another green variety, lighter pink flesh compared to the darker red flesh of my grandpa's, we'll call it the Grandpa Samaan green fig variety, which I don't even know where, what variety that would be. I would say that this one, we're going to call it after my mom, the Hilda Kadota. My grandpa's will call it the Samaan green fig, and I know that its origins are somewhere of Eastern Europe. He went on a vacation back some 30 to 40 years ago, took a cutting, and from that shared it with all of his friends and family, and that's how it landed at my mom's house. And from there I've been sharing with my friends and family as well. But this one here is another, I'd say a superior green variety of fig. And let me share one more with you. So this here is an additional fig that I've also got. This one here is a cutting off of the Grandpa Samaan, my late Grandpa Samaan's green fig tree, the one that is of European origin. I'm also going to be cutting this down. You can try to enjoy it for the flavor. Keep in mind that dozens and dozens of families have enjoyed eating these figs all spring and all summer for many, many decades. But again, it's not my preferred favorite. That's the reason I put the 5 varieties on top of it. But I've always, still respected it, and hence gave it a place where I do harvest at least a few figs off of this in its container every single year. But I'll be making cuttings off of this, and we'll call this the Grandpa Samaan green fig. So if this ends up at your front door, you'll know where it started from. And again, hopefully we'll visit a few more gardens before the end of today. Let's get started. So let me just go over some of the materials that I brought with me here today. Those include, I brought with me a rooting hormone or a rooting powder, and again, it doesn't matter what the brand name is, but the primary value when it comes to a rooting powder is its ability to combat disease and fungal damage to your cutting. Almost as important as its ability to enhance the rooting, which is the rooting hormone that's within the products, is also the element of preservation of the wood to make sure that it doesn't rot, again, due to mold and mildew. And some of the things that some of you guys have suggested, instead of using a rooting powder, which is chemically based, is to use something like cinnamon, or another one that's recommended is using honey, and a third being using like boiled willow bark, because willow of almost all the trees root most easily and most readily. Figs root also quite readily, but the willow bark, if you actually boil it down or just basically crush it with some water, will actually release some of those hormones that can then benefit other cuttings, whether it be, and some of my easiest ones of accomplishing cuttings are the figs, as we're doing now. Grapes are also another easy one to accomplish, and a third one I would put even as a higher likelihood of success is roses, a little higher than even citrus. And then other things I've had most challenge with in regards to accomplished cuttings are things such as apples, and peaches and plums, and maybe one of you can explain why those don't cut as readily, and that's where you can now benefit from still accomplishing what we're doing here, which is cloning the parent plant by way of air layering. Air layering works on pretty much every plant, with the exception of like some palm trees. The monocot family has more exceptions than the dicot family. The dicot family would include your avocados, your apples, your peaches, your plums, a lot of your ornamental plants, your maple, your oak trees, you pretty much name it. Your dicots are those ones that when you plant a seed, it basically comes out with 2 leaves, and it also has a taproot, versus the monocots are typically represented by, at birth, when it comes out of that seed, it only has 1 leaf, hence the word monocot. It usually has a more fibrous trunk. The reason I would say it doesn't work with some palm trees is once you remove the head, the plant is dead. But again, other monocots would be sugarcane. You can do air layering on sugarcane successfully. And then the last way of propagating, as we mentioned earlier, is also grafting. So anyways, rooting powder. The other products I've got with me here is the Ivory Organics ready-to-use spray. I've also got it in the can form, and these cans, depending on how much water you add to it, can also be used as a foliage spray, as well as if you fill up the can with water, you'll have the brush on, which is what we're going to use today. And if you add less water, you'll actually have a tree paste, which is ideal for filling in more gaps and holes within your plant or sealing those grafting wounds within your tree. One other thing I want to share with you is this chart. It's been a while since I've shared it, but this chart here shows the value of cinnamon oil right here. And it says here, cinnamon oil helps repel ants, termites, and also has an antifungal characteristic. I've written these other oils because these oils are also in our 3-in-1 product, which is garlic oil, which helps repel aphids, also known as green fly in some countries, ants, beetles, borers, caterpillars, slugs, termites, whiteflies, termites. Is that? No, I'm repeating it from down here. Termites, and it also has antifungal properties. Cinnamon, we just discussed it. Ants, termites, antifungal. Clove oil, termites, scale, thripes, whiteflies, and mites. Peppermint oil, ants, beetles, cockroaches, flies, moths, and mosquitoes, and rodents. Rosemary oil, rodents. Spearmint oil, beetles, and rodents. Castor oil, rodents. And now take a look at the 3-in-1 product over here again, the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard, protection against damaging sunburn insects and rodents. And take a look at the oils again. We just talked about them. Castor oil, cinnamon oil, clove oil, garlic oil, peppermint oil, rosemary oil, and spearmint oil. So now you know the benefits of this. And again, with all of the prunes that we're going to do to the tree, the goal is we're going to seal all of them, and all the prunes from last year that still haven't healed over, we're going to coat those as well. So we'll do that together once we get started with this. If we back up a little bit further, I've got here a tray, a serving tray. I've got some painter's tape, and on it I'm starting off with these first 2 varieties. I got my Sharpie here. I wrote Panache, or that Tiger fig. Second, we're going to do the Kadota. And what I'm going to do is just basically label the part of the tray where I'm going to be setting these 2 cuttings. So I'll put the Panache on this side. I'm going to put my Kadota green on the left. And then I've got my paper towels. And what we're going to do with the paper towels is make sure that it's moist, like so. And once I bring the cuttings into it, the goal is to basically keep the cuttings moist until I eventually bag them for you as well. And we'll be bagging those together shortly. Well, let's get started. So to get started, and for you guys, I even got my hands on a brand new pair of pruners. I want to make sure that my cuts are, very clean and sharp, and that there isn't any tears, as that can also increase surface area for disease and harm to the wood. I'll explain that as we go forward. But what we're going to start off with is, you'll notice that this side here on this tree was grafted later, and as a result is smaller, and it's a variety of things. If you take a look at this particular one, which is my Chicago Hardy fig, come in a little closer and take a look at how well this graft has taken between my 2 fingers. This here is the top of the rootstock, and this here is the bottom of the scion wood, which is the grafted on Chicago Hardy. You can see how small it was when we grafted it on. It was just maybe the thickness of a half the diameter of a pencil, whereas now it's about 2 to 4 pencils thick. And you can see that it grew tall over here. It was about to be overpowering in this area. We've since pruned it, I would say sometime midsummer, to make way, allowing light to enter this last graft, which, as I mentioned earlier, used to be a grafted on Mission Black fig. That one, again, got torn off, so then I put on the Celestial, but I needed more light to enter this area, and that was the reason that we pruned this back, to allow and give this part of the tree a chance at success. and we've achieved just that. So now let's get started in regards to balancing the tree. I'm going to start with my two most vigorous branches, which are going to be the Panache or the Tiger Fig, which are these two branches. And again, this has been my most popular request. And then secondly, I'm going to go to my Kadota Green Fig as well. So to get started, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to come in a little closer here. What I'm going to do and what I'm following now is I'm watching, and again, I'm trying to balance where I'm going to end up pruning back on this, and I'm going to try to bring the height down. What I still see are these scars from the past, and these scars are basically the scars created by the leaves. If you can see where my fingertip is, this is a leaf scar, and within the leaf scar is a bud right here at the tip of my finger. If I come down a little bit further, here's another leaf scar, and right there is where the leaf once was connected, and right above it is the bud. Hopefully you can see that right there on the tip of my finger. If we go up a little higher, this leaf bud is behind the camera, so let's go up a little higher to the next one. Here's another leaf scar. You can see where the leaf once rested, and right above that is the bud. We're using this as the indicator on where to prune, because the goal is we're going to want to make sure that the buds are, as we've pruned our roses in the past, just earlier this year, we want to make sure that the center of the tree is as open as possible, and that the buds and the branches are growing in a vase-like pattern and not trying to compete for the inner part of the tree where the branches typically get tangled and competing for light. So with that being the case, what I'm going to do in this situation is I'm going to come down as low as, one other point I want to make real quick, some of your fig varieties also have what's known as a breba crop. By cutting this much wood away, you risk also losing that first crop of fig. It's inferior to your summer crop, but many people, especially in colder zones, depend on that breba early crop of figs, as the summer crop sometimes is competing with the fall nighttime low temperatures and cooler days that interfere with the ripening of figs. So you need to understand also how much to cut on your fig, but in general, the more you cut it, the more vigor you're going to have, the more growth you're going to have, and typically per leaf you're going to have another fig. So the more it grows and the more leaves it creates, the more figs you're going to get to enjoy, as long as you also don't go to the extreme where it's just focusing on growing at the expense of fruiting. But I've rarely had that issue. Typically what I would do when pruning my fig is I'd cut it back on average somewhere between 50 and down to about 70%. In this case, I feel like I'm pushing back down to like 90% just to give you guys some more cuttings out of this. So let's get started again. I'm looking down here and I can see that there's a bud in this direction over here, and I'm actually going to go down to where I'm just leaving just a few inches left of this scion or the selected Tiger Panache fig for myself. So I'm going to leave that here because it's growing out and away from the vase, and I'm going to make a straight clean cut right here. And there we go. What's going to happen now is you can see the saps are starting to accumulate. It's going to start dripping. Once it dries, and you can see that center pith, if I can come with this tool over here, the pith is always on the fig very soft and easily collapsible, an excellent entryway for beetles and termites to get into that and to start hollowing out the central part of the wood. So we're going to coat that with the Ivory Organics once this dries up, which will take on average about another 10 to 20 minutes. In the meantime, let's start preparing these cuttings. Check this out. So here we are now at the workstation. In regards to preparing the cuttings now for you, we've now got, as you can see, we left about 1/4 of an inch. Let's go back real quick to this point. We've left about 1/4 of an inch between the leaf scar, which is where the bud is, right here at the tip of my finger, and where we accomplish the prune over here. And also when we cut at an angle. Typically you'll cut it at an angle where it's a little bit larger on the bud side, or a little bit shorter behind the bud, but you're going to want to create that angle to make sure that if there's moisture or rain in the area, you want that to fall off the plant and not accumulate and potentially rot that exposed surface. What we're going to do next is we're going to prepare the fig cuttings, and as you can see, we started off with this damp paper towel to basically make sure that we keep the cuttings hydrated as we prepare and package them. With me focusing on that prune back there around the bud, what has resulted on this end is I've now got too much wood here at the bottom. I'm going to want to cut that off, as the chances of roots are going to come out of this node. If you can come in a little closer, it's important to understand the concept of node. And every place that there's a leaf, which is here, and there's the bud, Here's the leaf, the node, which is the section between each leaf. So here's the next node, the second node. If you go up, there's the third node. And at every node, there was once a leaf. And right where there was that leaf is that bud. And we can continue that all the way up. Node, there's the leaf scar, there's the bud. What we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna make sure we prune now 1/4 of an inch away from the scar. We're gonna cut in a straight fashion, and then we're gonna cut at an angle only on the top part of the scion wood. So let's prepare the bottom of the scion wood being we're gonna cut straight into the wood, like so. You can see this is now a straight cut with minimal surface area being exposed. We're gonna increase it in just a second, and I'll explain why and how. And then we're gonna now count. I'm gonna go 1 node, and keep in mind, this could be the cutting right here. This part, this half would go under the ground where it would root, and this top part above the ground would create the shoots. But in this case, I'm gonna make sure that I give a little bit more wood, and what we're gonna do is go up to the, here's the first node, second node, the third node. I'm gonna try to keep this pattern for everybody. As we mentioned earlier, we're gonna try to leave a little bit more wood where the leaf scar is and where the bud is, and less wood behind it by cutting at an angle now, like so. And there's the angle cut. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna prepare this node by, there's the leaf scar, there's the bud. What we're gonna do is somewhere near this area is I like to also scar it like so. That there increases the opportunity of moisture. In addition to, it's usually an excellent source where the roots are. Some people actually scar it in a couple of positions, but I'm just gonna do this one. I'm now gonna take my rooting hormone and dip it like so. You can see it's now coated, and it'll be then preserved just like so. You can see that I've got this here on the Kadota side. We're gonna have to reverse that and put it on the Panache Tiger side. And for those of you that receive this, it's quite obvious. If you take a look at the bark, it's variegated. It's got this pattern of brown, dark brown, light brown. There's some greens, there's some yellows. Such a beautiful tree, even though it's dormant. And there's no other variety of fig that I'm aware of that does that. So we're gonna keep it resting here under these moist paper towels as we continue preparing the rest of the cuttings. So after the exposed area has since dried, we can now go with our Ivory Organics. I'm using the 3-in-1 Plant Guard, which has the additional 7 natural garden oils to help create that defense to protect the surfaces against disease and potential wood-boring beetles and termites from entering. So now we're just going to basically coat this surface, and I'm going to show you a couple other surfaces as well. As we come along, so you can see that this surface is now coated. You can't see the pith, you can't see the wood. It's also available in colors brown and green if you want to go with something that's more natural. And if we come in a little closer, if you can take a look over here, for example, if you come around the side, you can see again, this here is coming off of the root stock, and this is the top of what was part of the approach grafting when we grafted it, and I'll put the links to the video where we accomplished this. And then on the bottom side, if you come around, hopefully you can capture this, right where my fingertips touching. This is the bottom of the scion wood. This is the bottom of the Panache fig when we grafted. You can still see that it's thin, but where it took, which is right above my finger at this point, you can see how much it's expanded and how well the graft has healed over. You can see the blend of the woods between the, we'll call it my grandpa Samaan's green fig, and then the Tiger Panache fig right above it. But we can still go with the product as well if there's any exposed areas. And this is something I've had my eye on for a while. This wood is now dead wood. It is not alive. So what I'm gonna do is go with my pruners here, and I'm gonna clean that up as well by getting as close as I can to the living tissues, which are basically right underneath in this zone. We're gonna cut the dead wood off to basically eliminate the risk of more beetles and termites entering it. As you can see, this is dead wood. You can see how dark brown, how brown that is. We're going to try to cut it off as clean as we can. We now hit some green tissues, as you can see here. But what's going to happen now come spring and summer is this is going to continue to expand and heal over this exposed dead wood. So until that happens, we're going to go with our product as well. And we're going to create a nice thick coat with the brush-on solution. And we're going to basically preserve that entire graft union as well by coating the product all the way around as well.
Well, my name is Brad Fickes.
And Charles Malky. And
we're here today at my house here in the Hollywood Hills, and behind us is our prized Black Mission fig. This fig has given us plenty of figs in the years past, and today Charles and I spoke, and he wants to take some cuttings off of here so that he can produce new figs for you folks.
Do you want to tell us just briefly, I know you've got 3 other fig trees on your property, and we've selected of all the 3 the Black Mission fig. Why is this one your favorite?
The flavor of the fig, for number one, is the fact that it's so prolific. When it's fruiting, in some years it's better than others, but when it's fruiting it puts out a lot of figs. The figs are juicy when you pick them at the right time, and the flavor is incredible. Behind me I've got a brown turkey fig, and way behind that I have a white Kadota. Each of them have their own flavor. They're each of them are very good, but this is my favorite right here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Brad, and hope you guys all have a lot of success propagating these in your garden as well.
My pleasure. Done.
So here we are now with Kevin Chang of the BareRoot Nation Nursery, and we're here on his property. And Kevin, tell us a little bit more about BareRoot Nation.
So my name is Kevin Chang, and our main focus is growing rare and exotic fruits that the average person really wouldn't be able to find at your local nursery. So for an example, a soursop, cherimoya, or rare guavas, even rare citrus, even though it's a common thing you could find around.
No, that's fantastic. I noticed you got also a huge variety of mangoes, which I'm going to do a tour with you after we conclude this video, and we'll post that in the upcoming days and weeks for other people to enjoy a little bit more of the tour of these beautiful, magnificent, tropical and exotic fruits that are surrounding this property. And I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. But let us know, Kevin's actually agreed to donate his green variety of fig. Can you tell us what this is and more about it?
So yeah, here we got the green Kadota fig. It's one of my favorites because it's a pretty large size fig. Tastes a little bit like honey, and the fact that they're green also helps them blend in with the leaves, so predators won't have an easy time finding your crop.
That's great. So the green Kadota fig, with those of you that receive cuttings off of this BareRoot Nation's Kadota fig tree, it'll be labeled as such. The BareRoot Nation Kadota fig is what we're going to name it. So hopefully you'll be the recipient of one of these cuttings from the BareRoot Nation tropical and exotic and rare fruit garden. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this educational moment by Arbor Organics, and if so, be sure to like it. Most importantly, by subscribing below, you'll be connected to this and all of our other educational gardening videos by Arbor Organics. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening. And also, be sure to stay tuned so that you can follow the steps on successfully taking these cuttings that I'm sending you into successful and thriving and growing fig trees. I've learned a lot of tips between last year's cutting videos and this year, and be sure to stay tuned so you can see all of those helpful tips I'm going to share with you in the upcoming days. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening.